with a great play for the moral high ground in the Western tradition. I expect in other traditions, although I'm not sure actually about that, because what history should never be is simply consolatory self-congratulation. History ought not. It's great that we have all these biographies of the founding fathers, men who are white, wise, virtuous, brilliant, could actually run the White House and so on. It's fine, but if it's just really the genealogy of the wonderfulness of us now, then what it loses is the sense of history as a gadfly. That's why history was invented by Thucydides the Greek in particular, and to some extent by Herodotus, but especially by Thucydides. Because Thucydides in the Peloponnesian Wars was a fine general. Yes, he had axes to grind, he had sour grapes, but above all, what he felt had happened to the Athenian Empire, to which he was devoted, Athenian through and through, was that it had suffered from a kind of terrible case of hubristic overreach. And that magnificent great masterpiece, Class, if you haven't read it, you know, there will be an exam later before I let you out, is structured towards the catastrophic expedition to Sicily, to Syracuse, isn't it? And so it's essentially, it's quite wrong, I always think, when Thucydides is actually, you know, the bit that's taken for core curricula syllabi in colleges all over America is the, I mean, it's a fine piece of rhetoric, Pericles' famous funeral oration, the reasons to justify dying for the sake of a free country or free city-state. The real drama is absolutely that extraordinary, terrible mayhem, bloodshed that happens towards the end of the book. So the point about Thucydides is history begins with him as an attack on complacency. It's meant to give us insomnia. It's meant essentially to sort of, it's either critical or it's nothing, or it's degraded. And I suppose that what, you know, when we were growing up, more of us, you could go two ways as a young historian in the 60s. You could either go, not necessarily in the spirit of simply, you know, executing and exercising prolonged complacency, but you could indeed, nonetheless, do the origins of British modern political liberalism, or, you know, the whatever it's going to be, why the Civil War in Britain, you know, came about, and so on. Or you could really reach for a culture that was not your own, where you had a certain amount of more kind of freedom, perhaps, because you weren't quite so invested in it, that you could actually see it with the commended degree of objectivity and dispassion. And so I set about working on the Dutch and their relationship with the French. I given lectures on the French Revolution. I thought I would end up always as a kind of French Revolutionary historian. Then something actually odd happened to me, which is all kind of preliminary, I suppose, to having the confidence or the recklessness or both to actually to really engage in this extraordinary project, which sort of changed my life, really. And that's the French Revolution book, Citizens, which came out for the bicentennial of the French Revolution. And there I assumed, you know, that actually, whichever way I would turn in exploring this narrative, that it would essentially be a distillation of detached observations. But there was something that was very odd. I thought, before I actually decided to write it, and it was not my idea, it was the idea of my wonderful Penguin editor, a man called Peter Carson. I would actually read the books that had been produced about the French Revolution in 1889, for the centennial of the French Revolution. And those books were actually stretched politically right across the range, from Republican to kind of misty-eyed nationalist. But all what they had in common, the people who wrote them were only 3 or 4, or sometimes even 2 generations, the old men, out from witnesses, really, of the French Revolution. What they were cages licked by flame. They really were. The sense, actually, particularly of the contagious infectiousness of grand rhetoric and how it could stir crowds and get you into trouble, or you know, turn the allegiance of thousands from moment to moment, was an extraordinary thing, and it was embedded in the manner of writing, which was all designed to make the moment very materially present, which is what I tried to do in that book. And I began to think there was something to be said, not for proximity, superimposing itself on distance, but there was something to be said for doing that kind of writerly trick almost. I mean, trick with a in the best possible way of a kind of an imaginative reenactment. First of all, bring people into the presence of the dead and make the dead live again. That's your first obligation in a way, but don't make that a kind of weird intellectual narcotic that prevents you from actually Thucydides' insistence on analytical question probing. That's what Thucydides' predecessor, about whom he was rather hard, Herodotus, meant when he used the word Historia in Greek in the very first sentence of his book. I'm not a Greek scholar, but all my Greek scholar friends tell me Historia has in the first instance the sense of an inquiry, in other words, that analytical part of the cerebellum, but in the other sense too, of course, it means storytelling. And I thought, well, when the BBC phoned me up, amazingly, after I finished The American Future of History and said, we've got a project for you and for you to consider, and you'll either love it or you'll run a million miles away from it, I knew, and come and have a drink, said Adam Kemp, who was the executive, very nice man. And I knew what it was, really, absolutely knew what it was. And I thought I really must try it. And not least because of the fact the BBC were offering it as a possibility. I wasn't all locked up. And lovely Angela Pfeffer, the writer of the Haaretz, said Simon Schama's done, when the series, he was reviewing the television programs, and he said, Simon Schama's done this absolute terrible thing. He's robbed all Israel of the standard accusation that the BBC is anti-Semitic.